Hi there again. This is Don Lange reporting to you from our studios here in Muscatine with Senior Citizens Presents. See, it's hard for me to get back on. Today we are welcoming to our show Don Platt, our distinguished gentleman here to say. Don, we welcome you to join us today, and we'll talk about you.
Well, thanks, Don. Let's not talk too much about me.
We want to know everything.
Oh, you want to know everything? Well, can we leave out just a little bit?
Well, whatever you think.
Everyone has some parts of their life they're not really
Keep
not
some
proud
in the
of.
closet.
Right.
That's fine.
Right.
We will start out with your start in the world. Where were you born? You were not a resident per se of our county at the time.
No, I started out in the next county east of here in Scott County. I was born on a farm one wintry night in September. We don't have those kind of winters any longer, but my mother tells me that the doctor came out in a sled and a horse and delivered me, and it was a snowstorm at that time in September. Of course, that's been almost 70 years ago, so I suppose things do change in that length of time.
Somehow or other, they do have a way of going forward, yeah.
Yes, they certainly do.
Okay, there you left there, as I think we discussed briefly, and went to another county.
Well, I kind of made the rounds a little bit. I ended up, after the Depression kind of hit people around, it also hit my folks too, and we ended up southwest of Letts in Louisa County on a farm down there. And that's where I basically grew up and spent most of my time was in Louisa County. And I went to school at Letts, the old building on the hill. They're going to do away with that building now. I think they're having a sale here shortly between it and Grandview Building both. If you want to make a good investment, why, maybe you could do that. Buy that, and we'll turn it into a television studio or something like that.
That sounds reasonable.
It does.
In commemoration of Don Platt.
Well, we could do that, I suppose. After I went through high school, the things that were really happening about that time was World War II came along, and so we really didn't have much to think about except going into service. I remember our superintendent came to us and he said, I hope you boys, we were in high school, he says, I hope you finish high school first before you go to service. And we did. And shortly after that, that was 1942, I went into service and I was discharged in, remember the day of February 18th, 1946. And happy to be home.
That's in your memory, I'm sure.
That's right. My wife was teaching here in Muscatine then, and
well, you had found a wife in the meantime.
Oh, I found a wife when I came back from overseas. I had a nice long R&R leave, and I got married in November of '45 to a girl that I graduated with.
How about that?
In high school.
Some local talent, huh?
Right, local talent. And she had taught at Wapello, and then she came to Muscatine and was teaching in the old Lincoln School, right down the street here on Park Avenue, and I married her, and we've been together ever since.
That's great. Now that's a good start of history right there. Now, okay, now you've served your country dutifully and have returned home. Now what are we going to do, Don?
Well, after I got home, things were a little tough. You know, they had the old 52-20 club, they called it then, 52 weeks, $20 a week, while you tried to find yourself a job. And it was veterans unemployment. I think I got a couple weeks of that, but I didn't really get much of that. I went to work delivering with Chet Axel and the boys down at Harry Hahn's.
Yes.
They had the produce house down there, and I was delivering. They had all these little ma and pa grocery stores around town. They were really nice, you know, and I really enjoyed that. And then I got a chance to go on the police department here. And so I joined the police department, and I was doing pretty well there, and I'd put in my application. I thought, well, I'd like to do a little better than Muscatine. I thought I'd put in my application for the Secret Service and U.S. Secret Service. Now, that's really ambition, you know.
I guess it would be.
But
it scares me.
It did me too. But in the meantime, I spent a little over 4 years here, 4.5, I guess, on the police department before I had the opportunity then to go on the Iowa State Patrol, which was the old Iowa Highway Patrol. And so I went to the academy in Des Moines out at Camp Dodge. Well, while I was in Camp Dodge, Secret Service came along, wanted to know if I'd like to report, and I sent them back a letter, said no, I didn't think I wanted to. I was already into this, and I thought you know, things were pretty tough then, and I just didn't see how I could take the time and.
Right. You were established by that time.
Oh yes, and you had to have a little income. Where, you know, things were a little different then than they are today, and so I turned them down, and I finished the academy with the State Patrol and took my first assignment down in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. We went down there, my wife and I, and we had a son then. I was born in the old Hershey Hospital over here on Mulberry.
That dates you a bit.
That dates me a bit, doesn't it? Because we now have a nice new facility over there
yes.
in that area.
Right, we do.
But we moved down there, and I spent 10 years there. We then moved over to northwest Iowa, Carroll, Iowa, and we were there a short time, and you know, the wind never stops blowing over there.
Is that right?
In northwest Iowa. And the winters are just about as bad. I think there's a barbed wire fence separates that part of the country from the North Pole. And
you said it.
what they have are what they call rivers over there are really creeks back here. And it's pretty hard when you've been raised over by the Mississippi to kind of handle that thing. So driver's license came open. I was on the road all the time up there. I was just an old road trooper.
Before we leave that, Don, give us a couple of instances that you experienced on the road with the Iowa Highway Patrol at the time it was called. Just a couple of little,
well, I've had numerous close shaves and whatever you call it. I remember one time I got 3 guys off of. They were looking for them all over southeast Iowa. They'd been involved in about 40 post office burglaries all over Illinois and Iowa and Missouri, and I spotted them, and they had gotten on a bus, and I apprehended them off the bus going out of Mount Pleasant. And they were armed at the time. I was lucky that they chose not to do anything with a bus full of people, or it could have been a very dangerous situation.
Very disastrous, right.
I've been in numerous close scrapes with escaped prisoners. You know, we had Fort Madison, which was not too far away, and they were always escaping. I've been twice in the middle of the night in Fort Madison when we had the big prison riots down there, and that's a pretty scary situation in there because you take away all of your own arms and everything. You can't go in there that way, and you try to quell a riot, and it becomes pretty dangerous.
Well, what I was trying to do, Don, is just let people know you don't ride around in the car all day on the highway.
Oh, no,
that's what I'm trying to show.
No, you don't ride around the car all the time.
No, you have other experiences other than arresting people for speeding and whatever.
Well, yeah, back in those days, there were only less than half as many of us as they have today.
Yeah.
And we covered the same state of Iowa has not increased in size, you know, it's remained pretty stable. And we covered it. The sheriff's offices usually consisted of a sheriff and 1 deputy at the most. They didn't have the coverage, so we all worked long, hard hours. And we had a minimum day at that time of 12 hours a day. And I'd have been tickled to death to work it because most of the time it was 15, 16, 17 hours. And that's... but things have changed, and I'm glad that they have.
Well, everything gets
right.
Around
It gets
experience and everything. Okay, I just wanted to brief on that. Then comes the idea that you were looking at a possibility going into the driver's license. License Bureau.
Yes. While I was at Carroll,
part of the same firm.
Oh, sure. Yep. The Iowa Highway Patrol at that time handled all the driver's license. They had driver's license examiners in the whole state of Iowa, and driver's license became open in this area. And I thought, well, that's really not too bad, you know. I think maybe I could put up with that driver's license a little while to get back in the area of the state where I really like. So I put in for a transfer, and I remember I was driving one morning down by Coon Rapids, getting ready to go coffee down there with, always had coffee with old Roswell Garst and these boys in Coon Rapids in the morning. And I got a call to call the chief in Des Moines. So I called the chief, and he said, Platt, is there any reason why you can't go back to Muscatine? And he said, you know, he says, we never usually send you back to the town you come out of. And I said, well, Chief, I really don't know any reason why I can't go back there. I've been gone 14 years, you
No
know.
one's after you or anything.
And I don't think anyone's after me anymore. So he said, well, I think this was like Tuesday. He said, report there next Monday morning. So I thought, well, that's pretty fast, but I told him that I'd be here. So I came here to prepare a place for my wife and my children then. And so I moved back here in 1964. And I've been here ever since then. And I worked driver's license then for, about almost 7 years.
7 years ago.
Yeah, 6.5, 7 years.
I think that's where I first had the opportunity to meet with you, not in an official manner now, Don. I mean,
Right,
right. Just a renewal.
Right.
But you can relate, again, to some experiences that were humorous and
yes.
also just as dangerous almost.
Oh, I've been yeah, I've been about everywhere. I've been through used car lots, giving driving tests. I've been up on people's front porches. I've been in their yards and in their lawns. I had Iowa City, and I had Wapello and Muscatine were my three places that I gave licenses. Well, Iowa City, about that time, there was quite an influx of the Oriental and the Asiatic people that came here to go to the university, and lo and behold, those people had never grown up like our children, you know, in a mechanized society, and to them, driving was really a really difficult thing to learn to do, you know.
Sure it was.
Not as easy for them as it was for our children who have grown up in where things were mechanized.
Right.
And I had some really hard, some hair-raising experiences when it came time to give them driving tests, you know. And but luckily, everything worked out all right, and we got along.
Through the turmoil.
We got through the turmoil and everything.
Got your feet on the ground.
Right, and so when that was, they decided then. Well, Senator Drake at that time came and he talked to me, and he says, "I'm thinking about rewriting the whole Department of Transportation and things like that, and I wondered if I had some suggestions for him and things." And we talked for quite a while when he was rewriting the bill, and ended up about that time the Department of Transportation then took over the driver's licensing. So that meant for me to go back on the road again, and I went back on the road again, and then I became an administrative assistant at the patrol's office in Bettendorf at I-74. And
by the Jumers there.
Sure, right. And I was there till I retired in 1976, October 76.
Okay.
Was the time I retired, and I look back on those years and I think, well, they were from the time I had on a PD, and through that time I had a lot of good times, a lot of bad times, but they were good to me, you know.
Life. I mean,
life was good to me.
You lived your life quite well, I think, and enjoyed all of it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're sitting around doing nothing. I don't think that's
We are.
true. But now comes the finality of your career, politics. And I say that in all fairness. That's a final as far as I'm concerned, but you did it well.
Well, thank you.
How did you happen to get into politics? Now, you weren't doing a lot. I don't think you'd really looked at anything future as far as retirement. You'd retired, so you were going to look forward to retirement, I assume.
Well, yes, but I was pretty young at that time, you know.
Yeah,
I was about 54 years old when I had my time. Yes, and when I had my time in and was drawing my my retirement, I really, you know, wasn't interested too much in politics. It really wasn't entering my mind, but there were a couple incidents happened in the city here about that time that got me started in it. And, one was the big turmoil we had over between selling that ground out by the high school to the Hy-Vee on the corner where the drive-in theater was. They were going to, Hy-Vee wanted to put their grocery store out there and start a mini mall and things like that. It became a real dirty fight, you know, and there were a lot of people that had signed petitions, probably had, 3,000-4,000 people that were in favor of doing it, and the council voted absolutely the opposite of it, you know, and it made a lot of people angry, and so some people came to me and said, why don't you run for First Ward, be the alderman in First Ward? And I said, I really, you know, don't have any ambitions along that way. Well, they kept after me, and I finally said, well, yes, I would one time. So that's how I really got started. I ran that time. I think I had, well, I had one, let's see, I had one person, Rodney Shelf.
Okay.
He lived right, not too far from me, about a block from me on, he lived on Foyam, close to Logan.
Okay.
And I live on Devitt. And we were good friends. My wife had his children in school and everything, you know, and we talked and we said, hey, it's all right. Whoever wins, it's good, you know. Neither one of us, you know, we're here because somebody asked us to be. And so we had a little run out, and I won that election. I ran the next time. I didn't have any opposition at that time.
You did well, in other words. They liked you. So
well, I don't know. No one really wanted the dirty job. You know, it really wasn't the pay. You know,
No.
I think it paid $100 a month or something like that. But Evelyn Sholin was the mayor at that time, and I really had a lot of respect for her. It was a real learning process for me during that time,
Yes.
you know, and of someone to come in and be green in politics like that. And Evelyn had been, she had been a council person, and she had served on the council, and then she'd had a couple terms. She was in her second term as the mayor, you know, and when I was in my second term of being on the council. And she was a great lady,
Yes.
you know, and she was a great teacher.
Both
And
right? Politician and teacher,
right, and she taught me a lot of things, you know, about politics, of compromise and things like that, and I've always kept it in my mind. And so when Evelyn decided she wasn't going to run again, well, people said, well, why don't you run for mayor, you know? And I said, well, I think I'm stepping a little bit out of the shoes, you know. And no one came along, and they kept after me, and I finally relented, and I said, well, I will. Well, as I recall, I think there were 4 of us ran at that time for mayor, and the first time I ran. So, but I ended up with 56.5% of the vote of the city, so I thought it was a vote of confidence from the citizens of Muscatine, and I felt good about it. I really enjoyed the times that I served in city government. It was probably more rewarding than the times I had afterward. It was a rewarding time.
Yeah. Anything particular in your mind that stands out during your term that you can point to with pride that was accomplished, as it were?
Well, there's so many things that we had started when I was on the council and Evelyn was mayor that kind of terminated and went and came along when I was mayor. The bypass, you know,
here
we dedicated the bypass. We had the buildings going on with we dedicated the tower apartments up on Iowa Avenue.
The old high school. That was my high school. You knocked down there.
Oh, I know. I know. But we've got a nice facility up there now, you know. We had built some public housing, you know, on Cedar Street, and we had some over on Hauser Street we built there. While I was mayor, we did the Sunset way down on Hauser, down by the new complex now, the soccer complex.
Right.
The one thing I really wanted, and the council and I and the city administrator all worked together, and I really wanted a new public works facility. And that was one thing that we really built, and I've been proud of while I was mayor. And we did it with only $75,000 worth of
funds,
general obligation bonds. We saved our monies that we were receiving that time from the federal government, and we said, well, those funds are going to dry up. We'll save them for capital improvements and things like that. And they came within $75,000 of paying for it. So, and it was over $1.5 million project.
Okay, now we have the city cleared up, more or less.
Well,
how do you ever clear that?
It never clears up, but it goes.
Okay, now we're going to go into the future, where again your approach to do something a little bit different, again to go into a higher level of politics, which again I think you weren't overly excited about it
No,
going into it, but you were told it would be the proper thing to do and led to believe this is the way to go.
Well,
Being
that's
a
true.
good gentleman you were, you listened and accepted.
Well, yeah, it wasn't all that easy either.
I'm sure not.
I went to lunch one day down at the Elks, and I was approached there, and someone said, "I'd like to speak to you a moment." And so a couple people came to me, and they said, "You know, Betty Hoffman Bright is going to retire and not run this time for the legislature, and we would like you to run in her place."
That came out of nowhere, didn't it?
And yeah, it came out of nowhere and really knocked me. You know, I had no idea. You know, no ambition whatsoever for that sort of thing. Tell you the truth, I was really happy doing what I was doing. We had a good council. We had a good city administrator. We had good staff. We were in a real period of growth and development here in the city during those years. And we had already made the tough decisions when Evelyn was mayor and I was on the council of setting up finance department and all these other things so that we could really get a handle on where we were going in the city. And so things were really running good and really running nice, and I was really happy. And I said, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. You know, I really don't want to go, you know. Well, they came back a couple times and said, well, we can't get anyone else that we feel would be qualified that we know could really take that job and handle it well. And,
there you are.
And, well,
You
maybe yes, maybe no. But it's a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
So I finally said, well, yes, I'll do it, you know. So I did. I had no opposition in the election, and I ran that election. And I was reelected one time after that.
Let me interject something here. Did you have to then give up part of your term of mayor?
I gave up the last year of my
I
term
thought
of
that
mayor.
you had
Yeah,
to then
I had
give in,
because it happened right in the middle of the
That's what I was
term.
thinking you had to actually.
And
But
I
you weren't
really
prepared for it all.
didn't know, and I really didn't want to do it. You know, I was really happy doing what I was doing. But I did, and they held a special election, and I think that's when Claire York
Off of the council.
off
I
the
think
council
Yes, okay.
was on the council, and Claire won that election for that 1 year remaining on my term, and then they had to have another election after that. But I served 2 years up there. I roomed with Senator Drake, and he was.
Now, you were a representative, right?
I was a state
Okay.
representative,
Right.
and he was a senator, and we worked really well together on
And
a
you're
number
from
of issues.
districts opposed to county-wise. In other
Yes.
words, some of your district would
Yes.
run into Louisa or Scott.
Oh yes,
actually.
I had city of Muscatine, and I went right on west. I had 76 and those townships
Gotcha,
out there at the
down
end,
there.
and yes, and Fruitland.
Okay.
And then I went into all of the north half of Louisa County down, kind of stayed with the Iowa River.
Okay.
Uh,
I know they
So,
reapportioned here recently. I
well,
remember
they
reading about that,
they did.
yeah.
They redistrict here lately, but that was my territory then. So it took me kind of back into my old home stomping grounds, and besides being in Muscatine here, so people were pretty familiar with me, and so.
Yeah, you were a household name by that time, Don.
Well-
Let's face it, you know. We all knew who you were then.
Well,
You
I
had
suppose I got my
established yourself.
notoriety, I suppose, given driver's license. Everyone gets notoriety with driver's license, either good or bad.
There you are. Okay, we're in Des Moines now. Did we learn anything there? I mean, what is your
Well,
interpretation
I
of
really
what-
did. It was a
what
good
the state
experience.
Congress is?
I enjoyed my terms in the legislature, and I tried to work hard when I was up there. I really didn't. I really didn't get the same satisfaction that I got in local government, though, as being mayor. And
Yes.
well, the thing I really liked about the city government, and I hope it remains the same here, and not unlike and stays nonpartisan. We have a couple counties in Iowa yet, or cities in Iowa that are still partisan politics, and they're always in trouble, and they're always arguing things like that. And that's what happens to the legislature.
Right.
You know, they're hung up. They get hung up on parties up there,
Right, like
and they're good people
right
on
now.
both parties. You know, that work hard together.
Right.
And probably out of the 150 people up there, half of those people, 75 of the people between the House and the Senate, and Republican and Democrat, are the people that work and make all the bills
Actually
go.
maintain
And keep things going.
Right.
You know, and you have to just put partisan politics aside and do those sort of things. And it's difficult at times, you know. It gets into some real hassles when you get some good bills, you know, and you have so many personalities that you have to please, and there, you know, you have 150 egos up there.
That's a good word.
They have to be fed.
Yes.
You know, and that happens.
And then again, the party line has to be recognized. Like you say, you don't feel it would be too far away to have that nonpartisan. That'll never happen, obviously, because of the national situation.
But it would be good for it'd be good. It'd be good if it would happen, because that's a nice thing about the city and city politics, and what you do here is nonpartisan. And I think when you leave that out, that you can work together a lot easier and try to accomplish things, and you forget about that sort of thing.
No basis of what you voted as before in other elections. I mean, you're strictly Don Platt.
That's
strictly.
I tried to be.
You tried to be that in the legislation, but obviously it doesn't work.
I tried to be that, you know. Yeah, right. You have to follow the party there, and it took me a while to get used to that sort of thing. You know, I like to be Don Platt to the people that elected me, you know, and forget about partisan politics and things like that. But it doesn't always work that way, you know. And there's some times that you just have to give those things up and still try to do what was best. Right.
Did you finally terminate your own time? I know you had enough.
Well,
I mean, I feel that's probably what happened.
I think by that time my wife was retiring from the public school system, and I got to looking at it. My wife had taught school, you know, for over 30 years. By that time, I had had some 42 years of public service in myself.
Right.
And I looked at that and I said, you know, if we're ever going to have a life together,
better start now.
We better start now, because my wife really raised my family, you know, the children and things, because I was on the road and I was gone all the time. Yeah. And it was time that I give time to her, and we have some time together to enjoy ourselves. It isn't any sense of working all your life and trying to have a retirement if you're really not going to give that time to each other.
There you go. You're a good man, Don.
And she said,
I'm sure you're appreciated at home by now.
Well, mother said she's going to retire, and I told her, I said, that sounds great to me. You know, I'm going to be 65 years old, and I've given, you know, enough, and you have too.
Now
it's time for
it,
and it's our time.
Right.
And so that's what we've done.
Now, have you enjoyed it?
And we have enjoyed it.
There you go.
And we're still enjoying it.
That's the important thing. You are enjoying each other's company and the world.
Right. Yeah,
so that's the name of the game.
Yeah, we've taken
vacation a bit.
Sure, and we had, you know, we go up to Iowa City and we watch the ball games. We like basketball, and we've really gotten interested in, and we've had good girls basketball teams here. You know,
we have a girls'
and we started following girls basketball at the university. You know, and gosh, we were traveled. I think we only missed one or two games, even out of state last year.
Well, you got nothing else to do.
Oh no, and we had fun. We went to Final Four. Sure. Well, our son passed away in 1970.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I
well, when he was a baby, he had real bad heart problems, and by the time he was 6 years old, he was one of the first 100 in the United States that had open heart surgery.
Oh my goodness. Well, no, that's a fact that I wasn't aware of. Maybe people were, but now we are. That's great. I mean, to know about it, you know.
But anyway, we had 14 years after he had open heart surgery that we really had, we had him where we didn't have that. They said he would never live to be 10 years old, you know, but we had 14 more good. He lived till he's 20, and we had a good time.
That's true.
You know, so.
Don, we have had a good conversation, I feel. Are you happy?
Well, I'm happy. Are you, Don Lange?
Happy. Yes. Time has arrived where we're going to have to kind of back off a little bit and say to the general public for watching us, we thank you very much, and to the cameramen who are with us today, and to our director. And by the way, we are almost pleading. Come and help us. We'd like to invite people out to join us. Sherry has asked you. I'm going to ask. Come on, join us. 7292. Give us a call. Donate some time. Don might even. We've talked about that. So thank you much and have a good day. Goodbye.